information. So thanks. I know taking an hour out of your day is big. I appreciate it. I'm Darcy. This is Jane. We'll have other folks joining the call, but I do want to get started. So we are going to really share strategic tools with the assumption that you sort of have a plan, that you're not starting from scratch. You have something that you're working with. And then we're going to talk about really the audit tool that you completed and what the highs and lows are for that tool. And then that audit. And then we're going to compare that to the 70 or so other companies that have completed that tool. And then I'm going to kind of share where I normally see 3 gaps in a planning process. And I have some tools that I have in my deck that we'll talk about. They're not the complete tool, but if you want the tool, I'm a sharer of information. So feel free to ask for it in an editable file. I'm happy to do that. And mainly the 3 kind of gaps, and this is common, is this opportunity to ask for feedback in our strategy. How do we do that? What's a good way to do that? The other gap in strategy at times, and even in your assessment, is this strategic budget, this forecast, and really showing how we're going to hit those choices we talked about and the resources we need. And then honestly, this combination between strategy and operations. And it's great that Ray is on the call because it's the run, improve, grow, and they're different. And operational KPIs are the run, and the grow is strategic, and it deserves a separate team and a separate scorecard, separate priorities. They both need tactics, but they are separate mindset. So we'll talk about those and kind of the tools. And then overall, the goal here is, I always tell my clients, like it or not, strategy, in my opinion, is the easy part. In today's world, I'm in Vistage, I'm talking, I've got this book that you probably didn't make it through COVID without some strategy. So, the folks that got through COVID had a strategy, and we're in another zone, another time, that thinking through this current economic condition and what's going on with labor and all these changing assumptions with technology and AI and electronic vehicles, you have to have a strategy. So it's just not even, it's a table stake conversation for clients. And so I want to make that easy for you, and then I want to make it better. So that's kind of what I talk about a lot. In all of our chats, we will encourage you to ask questions or talk. I know that we've got some pretty smart people on the call, so feel free to do that. I think Jane's going to admit people as we get them in. And ask your questions. Jane will monitor that. I want to be able to ask them. I'm going to try to leave time for that within each section. And then if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, feel free to do that. It's always an opportunity to network and learn from the people that are here. So who are we? Stretch Strategic Leaders. You might know Cindy and I in our separate companies. Cindy is the people part of our company. She'll be on here. She's finishing up a training. And then I'm the strategist. So we've combined in a lot of companies the last 3 years. And it's funny, Jackie was talking about it, but when we do a comprehensive process, we do leadership development and assessment along with the strategy work, because that becomes a higher performing team when we do that. The outcome is high performance. We don't always do it that way, but a lot of our clients are using both at the same time. If you can imagine having both Cindy and I in the room together, it's pretty crazy and fun. And then we have Jane on the call. She's our marketing and does a lot of our social media and digital. Nancy, who's off today, but she's our business manager. And Mandy, does a lot of our curriculum development and branding. Practice what you preach. I always have to start here. This is just how I role model any conversation I have with the client. If you don't have these, if they're not visible, if you're not using them in presentations, if they're not clear on your website, they're not clear on your employee handbook, if I can't see them in your collateral, you're not living them. So I'm just a big believer, a big difference in strategy these days is the difference between mission and purpose. One of my clients is Ruby's. I was just at Ruby's. I'm on their board. They have a huge mission, which is impeccable experiences, but they have a huge purpose, which is culture of caring and to transform the industry. They have a foundation that really hasn't gotten the marketing that it can get. They just hired an amazing marketing director. So their jumpstart to their plan, they have all these concepts, but they haven't activated them. So, the first step to strategy is getting the concepts, making sure we have clarity on them. I've been updating a lot of core values lately, and I've been doing a lot of work on purpose statements lately. And by lately, I mean the last 3 to 5 years. One sort of conversation here is, if you haven't updated your values in the last 5 or 10 years, and they're have integrity, excellence, and teamwork in them, it might be time for an update. So I like phrases. I like authentic, aggressively authentic, and I think they really mean something. Another aside, but my daughter asked in SLU, she's at St. Louis University, freshman in college. She had a presentation in education, superintendent of the school district. He gave the whole presentation, 19 years old. He asked, does anyone have any questions? Lily raises her hand. Of course, she's my daughter. And she says, what are your core values? This is in a presentation to college. Interim superintendent said the worst thing you could ever say in strategy when you're talking to potential hires. We don't have any. Lily was horrified. She's like texting me. This is your market. This is who's going to join those school systems and educate their kids or be teachers. This matters to them. Culture matters to them. So on a jump start with my clients, sometimes I'm just renewing those values. And if you have more than 6, you won't remember them anyway. So let's get a list that is memorable. I do a pop quiz on all my clients. And if you've worked with me, we start with this. If you have it in every quarter, blank piece of paper, what are your purpose? What's your purpose? What's your values? What are differentiators? What's your vision? And then core focus, which is strategy. We'll talk a little bit about this. And then why hire you? Those are 6 questions of clarity. Again, I have a smart group on here, but can your leaders write that down on a blank piece of paper? That's really what we need our leaders to be able to do. So that's something to think about. And would they all get the same thing? That's important. Sometimes we don't have and I'll share with you kind of a template that I've been working with, but strategy needs to be clear, and we need to have these concepts in a document and all over the place that we can get to pretty easily. So I share all that just to say, in our model, what we're talking about strategy today, but really you have to have a strategy driven by healthy leaders. And then you have to be able to cascade it, which is the second part and third iteration of most of you on iterating strategy down in the organization. So if you've got a holding company strategy, you probably need business unit strategies. You might need market strategies. You might need product strategies. You might need team strategies. But really, how do you cascade the strategy from one to probably, if you're over 50 million, you probably need 3 or 4. So that's something just to start our conversation. Now I've given this presentation many a times, and then here's the funny thing. I gave it to Birmingham, Vistage, and I gave it in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And I did this. Running a company without a strategy is reckless. And I said, A.G. Lafley, and you know what they said? Who is A.G. Lafley? Which is funny because I thought everybody knew he was the P&G CEO. But if you don't live in Cincinnati, you don't know that. But again, he is the play to win guy. And if you haven't seen some of the videos on play to win, just put it in your search and you can get a good video on it. But strategy is about playing to win. What markets can we win with what products? That is strategy. What's our competitive advantage? So although I talk about purpose, values, and vision, strategy is really having a win strategy. And I like this quote because it's not about planning a company. It's about running a company with a plan, with a strategy. This is an active conversation. So this is something where, it takes a while to cascade and link strategy, but that's what we're talking about in this jumpstart stage. So these are things you guys already know. So I'm not gonna, but it is interesting because as I did your audit, your assessment, I'm gonna, talk about, if I don't have a clear picture of what my strategy is, and if you're not communicating it over and over again, and I don't have a shared supporting system, then I don't know what you're talking about. And by, the 5% is not your leadership team. The 5% is that new hire that's been there 3 months. They deserve to know. So if I'm working with companies now over 100 or 200, this is a full-time job, communicating strategy. And I put that on the marketing team, by the way. This is another one we'll talk about today, is the separate tracking strategy from operations. They both have goals, they both have outcomes, they both have tactics. But a lot of times we go back to tracking revenue and profit and not the new market or the new product that we're trying to introduce. It's the difference. The strategy is that new market, the new product. Of course, you need revenue and profit. So what are strategic outcomes versus our P&L statements? And I want clients jumpstart looking at that at least quarterly, and I'll share that scorecard with you. And we have this like industry challenge that a lot of companies fail at strategy. I don't think that's true. I think they're actually doing a lot better at strategy. They just don't know and they don't give themselves credit. So strategy gets a bad name because sometimes we do it, we never assess it, and we never review it, and we never celebrate it. But I don't think this is true, and my clients wouldn't say they're failing at it. But I do think sometimes we fail at celebrating, we fail at communicating, and we fail at linking. So that's part of jump starting. The plan is easy. The rest of that's hard. All right, I'm just sharing. You guys okay? I'm going pretty fast. Got a smart group here. I know we've got people joining. You can watch all of this from the beginning, but I really want to just kind of fire hose to you. This is a chart that Laura Bruner and I developed, 20 years ago when we were doing this. This, I'll give Laura a lot of credit here. We were with the chamber for a number of years doing their strategic planning program. I've done work with the aileron. Ray and I have worked together with this Run, Improve, Grow. And I'll tell you that strategy is really the jumpstart of strategy is sometimes we have to have it here just to get our operations in control. We have to get here, but strategy and how I talk to it with my clients is external in nature. I'm trying to help them look at opportunities and threats by what are the competitors doing? What are the opportunities in the marketplace? How do we do scenario planning? This is a big jump and a lot. And if you're not asking for feedback, if you're not interviewing customers, if you're not looking at competitors, if you're not benchmarking other people in your industry that aren't here, then we're not really doing strategy. I mean, we're really just doing operational planning. So I just want to recognize it's a big jump. It involves a mindset shift. But this is really strategies, this external view. And then we're trying to get here this well-defined framework that we've cascaded down. We've cascaded it down. A lot of my clients use EOS. I don't mind EOS. I think it's for smaller organizations and it starts with entrepreneur operating system. So at some point you move from an entrepreneur to a professional organization. EOS is fine. I don't think it's strategic after you get to about 20 or 30 million. It's just a traction tool. So I think this is on the leadership team to really make sure we have a good strategic framework, and you can implement it any way you want, but this takes a lot of conversations. All right, I'm not going to get in my soapbox about other systems. I like supporting systems, but I really think it's leadership's job to get through these phases. So I asked you in the audit about how well you're doing in each one of these. And I only bring this up and just to remind all of you that the listening and learning is required. We have to know and understand new information to think differently, and that's strategy. So if we're getting in a room and we're not asking or doing any data gathering, it's not strategy, it's operation. So this is a one piece. I'll share some surveys to do that. I know that this group knows that, but I just encourage you, that has to be quarterly and annually. The plan is easy. I'll show you a format for that plan. That was just an area of, in that 3-year budget where some of the big gaps are. And then this implementation and strategic management, that's where the money is. That's where the real work is, and separating, run and grow, run and improve from grow. I love that term from Ray. We really need to make sure that we understand what strategy is. And we've got a team, a separate team, and I'm going to talk about that, this jumpstart. If you have one leadership team reviewing all of this, I think you're an inefficient use of time. I'm going to talk about, I want a strategy team talking about strategy, a run the business team talking about running the business. And I want a leadership executive team at the top driving both teams. All right. So here we are looking at my time. I'm doing pretty good. And this is your results from the folks that completed the audit. The audit, I can give it to you. You can, one of the things that I like to do with all of my new clients is I give that audit out to all of your team. And when you completed it, you saw that you could give it a NA, like, I don't know what you're talking about, a 1, I've seen it, it's probably not updated, to a 4, fully utilized. And when I do this on a team basis, I find there's a range of answers within each one of those. So the salesperson might say we've analyzed the customer because they do it every day, but the HR, people person has never seen it. And so this is where, when I start and I'm jump starting, I just want all the information we have available to be accessible. So that's the first thing, that audit tool. I could send you it, but you could have your whole team kind of fill it out, and just make sure that we're sharing common information across these functions. But overall, as I've done this for a while, everybody has past 3 years of financials. That's a given. What they call like a softball, when you give that to someone and everyone can put like a good answer. Because if you didn't have that, we're in trouble. So you guys, good job having your past 3 years. The area that is normally the gap, and it's normally this feedback, how are we getting feedback on a regular basis? So on both of these, it's that employee feedback, and I'm going to separate a satisfaction and engagement survey from a strategic survey. I think they're different. I'm asking different questions on strategy than I'm asking on engagement and satisfaction. That has to happen. Strategy is different. So again, it's not surprising to me. This is benchmark, that this is where the lower scores are. So how do we close that gap? Happy to give these to you. So when I start with the client, and again, I'll do that survey first, that audit first, which is what you should do. And then you should just do, I think of 3 or 4 different surveys. And one is for who is on the strategic team. Now, the strategic team is more than the executive group. I'm going to say that it's more than the executive group. It's because if you just have the same people talking to each other, strategy, you're going to get the same information. So I want the strategic team to include key leaders that are going to really need to engage in the process. So we're going to ask them questions like, what is our core focus? What is our purpose? What is our mission? What is our vision? I have about a 14 question, open-ended question I start with. And that's just to see if everyone's given the same answers. Everyone tells me, we have this. And I'm like, okay, then just tell me that. Tell me. And you'd be surprised how many times I don't get the same answers. The board survey here is similar to what I would give to the organization or the management team. It's not as intense. But if you're not including your board in your strategy, you should, or your managers that are not in the room. This is a survey that they should be doing. And then customers are a huge piece of the puzzle. I like to interview about 10. I like to interview 1 or 2 myself. And then I ask you to do that. Why do you use us? What could we do better? These are strategic questions. If I'm sending it out to an organization with, a significant number of employees, I will use the tried and true start, stop, continue questionnaire from Procter & Gamble. So I've done that. Anyone who's being P&G knows they use that all the time. And I will do that when I start a process. I'll just do start, stop, continue to all the employees just to gather the change items. So think of that, that gets worked into the SWOT. If you have a SWOT and if you have a strategy, then this is just an example of a update survey. This is a current client, and I'll use SurveyMonkey. And the first thing I do is just, high level trends and challenges. And then I'll take your current SWOT and then engage them in reprioritizing that, because hopefully, again, I've got smart people on this call, but a SWOT is current reality. I would hope a year later, the current reality has changed because we've done something different. So an update survey says, how has our current reality changed? And hopefully we've improved some weaknesses. We've put some opportunities activated, and we've controlled some threats. I'm also asking them the open-ended questions on purpose and values. A lot of times in an update survey, I'm also asking core values. I just don't have it on here. So if you have core values in your update survey, I would ask all of your employees that the same 1 through 4, take each core value and say, how well are we living that out? 4 all the time, 3, sometimes 2 and 1. And then look and see how your core values are really getting lived in the organization. I most of the time include that in an update survey, just didn't have that in this one. So that's an update survey. So that kind of takes you through jumpstart, what the gaps are, is feedback, easy ways to do it are interviews, SurveyMonkey. And then this is more of an update if you already have a process in place and we're updating the SWOT, not creating it. Okay. The other one is competitors. Happy to share this tool. Competitors are a huge part of strategy. I don't want 12, I want to know who are the main people you're competing against or we can learn from. So think about this as a benchmark opportunity. And I do this with everyone. I mean, it's not just who is our direct competitors, but who are those competitors that do things better than we do? And it was funny, again, I was just with Ruby's today, and born and raised in Indy. They're not in Indy, but it's someone that Brittany uses as a benchmark competitor. And that she's got a new marketing and she's going out looking to see what Born and Raised does on Instagram. What does Born and Raised do on their website? What is Born and Raised doing? That's strategy, and making sure we're doing that and sharing that. That's the other one. Are we sharing that after the strategy team hears it? That's another thing that I find happens, that we do all this research and then we never tell anyone about it. That is part of this game, that we've got to make sure we close the gap with communication once we've learned these things. All right, so that's the preparing to plan, listen and learn. Couple of gaps I see, a couple of ways to close the gap. The next level, the next spot is plan development. This is, again, easy part. Do I have these audit statements? Do I have these concepts? And this is what you guys said, and this is what benchmark is. So again, benchmark, a lot of people have core values. I'm pretty psyched that you guys, most of you or some of you have KPIs, although I do look at this group and I'm not surprised by that. So that's great. But the gaps are this 3 to 5 year budget. I'm a little bit, would say SWOT, we can get a SWOT for you pretty, not easily. There's work to do there, but we need to get that available to your organization. And the other one here for this group I wanted to share is just my stakeholder goals and how I think about strategy. I want a very easy 2-page plan that my leadership team uses as a working document. And I'm going to share the strategic scorecard, which is down here. That'll come up again in the implementation and management piece. So this is I'm doing this right now. I'm doing Mad Trees update tomorrow. They actually use a focused CFO, Paul Bruner, who's extremely intelligent. But we start every session. Tomorrow's one day, and then we have the planning retreat in July. Tomorrow is assessing stakeholder goals. We have these goals. Brady and Kenny have gone out 5 years. This is financial and culture. It's not just numbers. It's what do I want my organization to look like? There's one of these. Brady and Kenny don't have one each. There's one that sometimes that takes some work. And then every year we're putting actuals and we're going out a year and we're talking about gaps. And they have gaps. They have gaps in these 5-year goals. And then that's what the next cycle solves. One of their gaps is revenue because they've been on beer, craft beer, but they're doing ready to drink cocktails and they're opening up restaurants. So part of their strategy is on the product and service side and closing the sales gap that the stakeholders have. So this is something that all of you and whatever role that you have, this is a jumpstart item. If you don't have this, you need this. I won't do a plan without it. It's a starting point. It is not the answer. It's just what they think they want. It is not the strategic goals. It's the stakeholder goals. So they're not going to be right. And so don't let someone say, well, I don't want to give you the answer. You're not. You're just telling me what's in your head. So that's important. The second thing I've worked on this for a long time. This is my example of a 3-year strategic plan. It's dated. It's got all my little 6 concepts I mentioned, but it also has assumptions that we're checking on a regular basis. It has investment strategy here that my 3-year budget is based on, what I'm building, holding, divesting. It's got decisions on markets and customers. It's got my value prop with some amount, not the measurement of it, but at least it's written. This is ours as an example. This takes a while to get. If you already have it, we're updating it. I just did a retail distributor yesterday, and we just spent 4 or 5 hours just updating this. How are we doing on it? A lot of times, if you have these 3-year goals, I'm just asking you every year to green, yellow, red, these outcomes on how close we're getting to that. And then what are the next priorities that we're going to work on? I want these high level kind of critical numbers. You can't go too deep here, but what's driving strategy? What are those key strategic shifts for us? This is us. It's these Stretch Academy participants. We're trying to do training. We know we need to spend marketing and we've got to figure out how to give back. So again, these are critical numbers that drive strategy. And then I got my SWOT. This is going to change. And I've got clarity on priority plans and outcomes. I want outcomes that are measurable in 1 year out, 1 year range. So this is just, if I had it my way, everybody would have clarity on this and everyone would have this. I keep it with me. I don't know where I put it, but if you have my book, I keep examples of companies that I think do these infographics well. I think if you don't have it, your company needs a really clear 1-page strategic infographic that you hand out to every one of your employees get. I mean, this is crazy, but it's one of mine. It went out to everyone. I have one from a client that just sent me one. We just finished it. This was theirs. Ruby's has theirs. I put examples in my book. But all this stuff is great, but we have to synthesize it down to what matters to me as an employee. And your employee needs to know this. It doesn't mean your customer needs to know this, but the employee needs to know this. I just was in Ruby's. This is on their wall. And this is something that we talk about all the time. Clarity of this has to start before we can communicate it. All right, now, this is one I just want to spend a little bit of time in, and I know I'm going fast, but I'm just going through this because I wanted everyone to understand what is going on as it relates to this 3-year forecast. I want this 3-year forecast to be by business segment, not by revenue. So if you're doing a strategic budget, and you have a stakeholder goal of 100 million or to grow, I'm at 75 and I want to get to 100, so I have a gap of 25 million. How much of that is going to come from what current business? And this is the messy middle strategy that a lot of companies skip. I'm just going to be honest with you. So the current reality is, where are you making money? All of you should be able to see that. It's different a little bit on parks, Jackie. The mission driven is a little bit different, but you have services and you have markets or geographies. Where are your revenue, your earned income, and what margin are you making? We've got to prioritize those through the GE McKinsey. I'm not getting into detail here, but there's a process that your team needs to go through to prioritize those business segments. And then we need to see how much we can close that 25 million with current business before we add new. I love new business. I love new products, but your best return on investment is current if you have it. So what is current reality? Where do we like this margin? Do we not? I like 30%. I don't like 8. I don't like 5. So in this company, like, these are either improve or hold, and this is grow. And so then I come here and I've got, another client. I just did this yesterday. They're about an 80 million company and they're doubling. And so we know they're actually know their markets. They're too much dependent on one market right now, which is part of the strategy to get out of dependency of one market and 3 customers, even at 80 million. But we've got to see, so that's all hold. We've got to hold that. They're still going to grow. Those markets are still going to grow. You can still they're going to get 5 million growth in those areas. But we're going to get 8 million down here because we're going to really go after this market and this product group. So this is strategy. This is strategy, the messy middle, that we understand our choices, and we have a budget that's based on markets and products, that then we understand our structure. Everyone says, oh, we need to update our structure. Structure follows strategy. I don't know what your structure is going to need to be unless I know what your strategy is. Are you building out your markets? Are you building out your products? Are you building out your geographies? Are you just scaling your revenue and you're building out your leadership team? All those are different structures. And so I say structure follows strategy, but I got to know what my strategy is. Does that make sense? I know I'm going fast, but I just want to be able to get through this because this was the goal of this call. I knew this webinar was only going to be for people who cared. So you are my care people. My next part is implementation and management. So I've listened, I've learned, I've planned, and now I'm going to implement and manage. I put those two together. It's a little different. Plan, do, check, act. It's that check, act part. But again, in benchmarking, lots of people have boards. That was pretty high, but not high. I highly recommend a board if you don't have one. I'm a big board believer. But the lowest one here is just the information. Do you have the information in a way that I could share it? I can see it. I can know it. And then this whole, what's a strategy scorecard? I don't get it. And then linking strategy and communicating strategy. So let me share a little bit about that. So I am a geek, and I'm not saying that all my clients do this, but if I believe strategy is a process, and I believe each one of these things are activities that somebody should own at some frequency, and we should know where it is. I can't tell you how many times I do a jumpstart or a strategy update, and I've said, okay, let's update the competitors. And guess what they say? Do you have it? Well, I'm not sure where it is. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Yes, I have it because I have a good Dropbox system and Basecamp, but they should have it. But I'll tell you, sometimes they rely on me and they shouldn't. So I'm getting better at making sure that my clients are putting a supporting system around strategy. Again, I'll mention EOS. EOS is great, but it doesn't put your data gathering. It just does your VTO. Some of my clients use Align. Some of my clients just use SharePoint or Smart Sheets or Dropbox. But having an idea of what are your tools, and I just asked this, who owns it, where is it, and who needs to know about it? So again, this is just trying to formalize strategy. And I'm not, if I've done 375 plans, just be honest, I've done about 10 of these. I'm just going to be honest with you. This is the step that gets missed, but it is really important to a really return on a process. So this is a strategy scorecard. A strategy scorecard is only 3 big things. We're doing an ERP system. This is my client yesterday. ERP system, brain surgery. They're finding another source. They source out of China. That's not good. Single source out of China. We're trying to find other sourcing partners. And their third one is structure to support growth. We need actually more people on the leadership team that have competencies that they need to do that next level of growth. And honestly, to be honest with you, Cindy's not on this call. I'm just going to be completely transparent because one of our clients just had a key leader quit, and that's a problem. So it happens when we're in this process. There's about a 25% turnover in the leadership team because we get here, they see what we're going to do, and they either decide they're out, it's too hard, I'm not going to do it. And that's where we say, they just don't believe it. They get stuck. They don't want to move forward and we need to replace them. And then the other option for our leaders are they're going to battle through it. We're going to figure this out. So it's freeze, flight, or fight. But I just have one that just is flighting. They're gone. So that happens. And I'm not afraid of that. It's normal for us, about 25% shifting on the leadership team and a big strategic change. This client's going through it. And it's unfortunate, but that's, Cindy's going to help them through it and we will help them through it. But a good strategic scorecard is reviewed quarterly. You're putting actuals in here to target. And most of the time in here, I actually have 1-year targets and 2-year targets, but I got a baseline. And sometimes I'm working on a strategy in the middle of the year. So then I'm going 1 year out. So these might change, but what am I trying to do with that? What is that strategy? And how do I measure outcomes successfully? And this is if you haven't seen this, Ray, you've probably seen this. Maybe you even gave it to me. The difference between operations and strategy, 2 motors on a boat. It's a good one. I'll share it with you. 2 motors on a boat. 1 motor is operation. And then the second motor is the accelerator for strategy, really helping us decide what island we're going to. Pretty cool. But they both need tactics. They both need gas and oil and maintenance and people. They both need resourcing. These are examples. Run the business here. That is that's basic now. You got to have a dashboard. You got to have executive level KPIs that are balanced, that know if we're running our business well every day. That is not strategy. That is operations. And you should be pushing that down. In Ruby's, we have 7 of these, 1 for every restaurant. You can't keep it up here because I don't know what the heck you're talking about. So the other thing here is strategy. Again, this is an example. This is OGSM. I have a roadmap here. You can think about that as quarterly rocks, but clarity on what success looks like as it relates to outcomes of strategy versus my linking it here, but what specifically do I want here? The other thing I'll just share is a jumpstart item because I shared this with the Vistage group. When I get this with the team at the end of the process, it's towards the end of the plan, I make every leader on that strategic team at the end give me a confidence level of 0 to 100 that we're going to hit that goal. I make everyone. So I'll go, okay, we have this strategic growth goal. There are 3 goals in it. Each one of you write down 3 numbers, 0 to 100, of how much you think we're going to hit that goal a year from now. And I don't get 100% every time. And I will say we're through the process. But the worst part is when my champion gives it a 25 because that person doesn't think they're going to get the resources that they need. But I will stay in that workshop until everyone is at 75 or above, which means we change the outcome or we change the action plan. That is a type of alignment and commitment and fight you need on clear strategic objectives and clear aligned objectives. Difference. I should be spending on that amount of time here on operations, but I'm certainly going to spend it here. Both of these need that commitment and that conflict on can we actually hit that goal or not. All right, here's my just soapbox, 2 seconds here. Most of you are in larger organizations, some of you aren't, but you've got to separate responsibility here. Your executive team, does not need to be on your run the business team unless they're a COO. They don't. Your executive team is on the strategic team with other key leaders. If you have your executive team are on 3 teams, we're like losing a lot of time here. So this is a big thing. I have a whole process here we worked on implementation, but this is a huge role clarity in scaling organizations. You guys got to let go. And then we've got to create these teams, high performing teams that execute strategy. So all of my strategies have high performing teams underneath them on each of those priorities. And by the way, I don't want my executives owning priorities. I try to have them mentor priorities, but not own them. So what does that mean? Well, I need to have other leaders on my strategic team. So when we're ready to own a priority, they're there to own it. So think about that as you're growing and getting there. This isn't anything other than death by meetings. If you're not doing this, you have to be. My groups are meeting on strategy about 2 hours a month, quarterly 4 to 8 hours, and annually between 1 and 2 and 3 days. So this is just jump starting, but just the reality of changing. I mean, think of what's happened just in the last week versus, a month. There's a lot changing our external environment, on technology, on AI, on geopolitical, on supply chain, on everything. And so if your group isn't constant, and just that's without even knowing that you're going to keep the people that you currently have, which who knows. So really making sure you have that. This is an example. I just put this is just the strategy rollout. I want you to recognize that when I go to roll out strategy, this is a larger organization. There's an internal and external communication to it. And I will tell you that one of my jump starts, I'll go to your website, and if I don't see anything that you told me that you are doing on your website, I'm going to question your communication plan. Again, you know this, but it's a soapbox. 75% of your potential employers are going to your website. And if they don't see a person or a career page, they are not applying for your job. So really strategy, culture, alignment, making sure we're really closing that gap on who we want to be, our desired state, both internally and externally, and communicating that on a regular basis. This client has monthly videos and a SharePoint and quarterly newsletters. All right, this is a quarterly review. I'm just sharing this. I'm happy to do it. I just did this with a client yesterday. Every quarter, we're assessing the priority. We're looking at how well we're doing. We're setting new rocks. We're celebrating. We do celebrate. It's good. It's a big piece of this too. But we really need to make sure those priorities are working. And I do that on a quarterly basis. And then this is my last slide. Here's what we think is going to happen. Here's what really happens. So if we all agree with that, then that means we really need to be monitoring and reviewing and assessing our plan a lot more often. That's it. Woo! So, yay. Whoa. All right. I am happy, willing to share. I wanted to get through that in 45 minutes and take any questions or comments, takeaways. Anyone? Oh, thank you, Ray.
I'll, of course, add something. So great job. I think what I've seen you do with a number of people that I've referred to clients is really get them to look outside, as you mentioned on the external KPIs. Too often, a lot of the rocks, a lot of the discussions are so focused internally, and the world's moving. So they're just comparing themselves to where they were, as opposed to what the market needs. So I think that focus on the outside is extremely valuable, and I know it's helped shape some strategies to be much more effective.
Yeah, and I think thank you, Ray. One of the more advanced tools, I didn't do it here, but there is that business segmentation, but also just opportunity analysis, and doing business cases on opportunities before we go off and decide them. I don't always do that, but I do it in my more advanced planners, where we might come into an update with 5 good opportunities, and the objective is we come out with 3. but we've business case those, we as in you guys with my help, we've business case those, and then we come in, we talk about them, we challenge them, we decide what assumptions need to be true to make them happen, and then we pick the 3 that we're going to come out with. That's strategy, because I'm going to assume that you've got purpose, we've got mission, we've got vision, we've got all this other stuff, and we can really get into the meat, which is choosing strategic direction. But I got to get all that other stuff in place first. Yeah.
And
Good.
the other point you made, which is, the executive team, whoever was working on the growth team, they cannot own the initiative because management capacity is the limit to the growth. And so making sure that whoever's working on the strategic team is not just folks who love to run or love consistency. Too often they select people because they're on the executive team to be on the strategic. Sometimes it's better off to have somebody who's a out of the box thinker on the strategic team as opposed to just the senior leadership team, because they don't have the capacity, both time wise, but also for some people in executive roles, they actually like keeping things the way they are because it maintains their power, their control. And some of these big, bold initiatives could, if you're playing to win, you could disrupt the structure. And for some people, that's a threat.
That's perfect. I agree with you completely. It's a part of why we do this combined process with Cindy, is that we believe there's untapped potential. And our goal in your strategic planning process is to build that potential so that you don't own everything coming out. I mean, Cindy and I do not like to do strategy with just an executive team, because then we can't build your potential. And that's why we invest in, have Cindy. She's amazing at building capacity. And so look at your strategic plan as an opportunity to build capacity, not limit. Any other comments?
No, Darcy,
This is Jackie.
Okay, yeah, Robert, go ahead, and then we'll do Jackie.
Okay, no, I was just wanting to mention that read your book lately. So that's how I kind of got to point B here. So I read the book. I saw an email come through from the group. So I went on and decided to join this. I was wondering how our company actually, I think we do an excellent job at the strategic planning. We do a 3 to 5 year plan. I can even show real quick because I have it. Okay, I can't show it, but we actually do a scorecard monthly, pass out to the team, quarterly meetings is going through. We really tried to engage employees. So I think we're doing a lot of the right things. I just wanted to join today to see if this was even, how close are we?
Awesome.
Are we doing even any of the right things or all the wrong things? And I think a lot of what you just went through confirmed that we do a lot of the right things. And but I noticed a few things out of this seminar, even that we could do better.
Yeah.
I don't think we engage, we go outside, we try to engage outside. But in what I've noticed in we do our planning in November, October, November-ish, try to have it done by the first of the year. And what I've noticed this year is we have the economy, the situation, the whole environment has changed over our past 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 months. And we're having to adapt. We are not where we thought we would be. And yeah, it's been a struggle, and we really implemented forecasting last year, and we're finding out we suck at forecasting.
Well, you and everybody else who does forecasting, but you did it. Like, you have to have a starting point just to iterate from there, right?
And we are 14 companies across the world. And we have 3 main production facilities, one in Loveland, one in Poland, one in Denmark. So we have a lot of strategy, a lot of different things. So we have to look at a complete global economy where we take in the SWOT analysis, where we're going, what we're doing.
Yeah.
And one of ours has been huge, where my company is Cold Jet. We're into CO2. So if you use dry ice in the
Yeah.
US, most than likely it's one of our machines that we built. I'm the vice president of global operations. And so, yeah, I mean, one of our big ones this year has been CO2.
Yeah.
CO2, liquid CO2 used to be something you could get readily available anywhere. And there is a extreme shortage in the world. And so we have to rethink and apply resources to, like you said, it's just not all profit and loss.
Yeah.
To continue our profit, we're going to have to pay attention for the next 5 years heavily on CO2 and who produces. So we are talking to people that don't reclaim, it's a secondary product, and we'll have to convince them to build infrastructure so we can have liquid CO2. So a very different company, and I appreciate the seminar, and yeah, you're I loved your book. I couldn't put it down. I gotta admit.
Awesome. Feel free to leave me an Amazon review. I mean, love it.
Okay.
That's awesome. A shameless plug. All right, Jackie. Jackie, what do you have?
I was going to ask how you differentiate on the strategy team between the strategic planning team and the strategic priorities team.
Oh, good question. I love it. So when we are at the, let's call end of the plan phase, we're gonna, you're gonna have 3 make or breaks, 3 priorities, and call it, market development, or putting in an ERP system, or putting in a digital strategy. And so the goal is that the priority champion would be on the team, on the strategy team, right? But what we want is the priority team to now kind of double, our opportunity to link it down and cascade it down. And we want to get other people in the organization, cross-functional, because it's a high-performing team, because we're working across the organization. And we want to get other people in the organization on those priority teams. And we're going to look at what skill sets do we need, who are the right people. And then you're going to, whoever that priority champion is going to be, we're going to now go and kick off a high performing priority team. We're going to kind of not start over, but we're going to say, all right, who is that team? Maybe put together a charter, have that team meet separately, that team own the outcomes, the project plans, barriers to completion, and meet on, I say, at least monthly, and most of them are meeting more frequently, to really own that priority. And think about it, it's going to be cross-functional across the organization. Okay. So, and again, I don't want it to be 13 people. I mean, it's still going to be an appropriate number that, and if you think RACI, if you've heard that, responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. Yep. Yeah, it's a combination of consulted and responsible, because we want the person accountable on the team. And if there's certain processes and systems, we kind of want them on it. But this is the team sort of responsible and consulted for carrying out that priority plan.
Okay.
But I want them separate, because that's one of the ways that we are going to link strategy through the organization. And then we actually make that sort of formal with kickoff teams for those priority teams, and, little team development, and making sure they get that 1-pager. So then we'll take that 1-pager and say, all right, priority champion, now you go teach your team what the strategy is. Take that 3-year summary, and then you got to walk through that 3-year summary with your priority planning team.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a great, for me, it's an underutilized channel. I think we keep it here when we could, and we know people are busy, but we could do a better job of linking people to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'll ask one more. So you mentioned the coming in and having a way of kind of advanced level of putting a business plan together or something of that nature for each of the different growth initiatives or strategic initiatives. Just acquired a business. So we started off with, I think, four to five new ideas.
Yeah.
Turned into six, and now we're at 9. So we're in the process of trying to put a business case for each one of them. I think the question is, when you look at, do you have a tool that helps you select them, even though the numbers may not necessarily, some numbers could be huge, but it's like strategically it doesn't make sense. Where something may be smaller but has a better opportunity. And then the other one is, how do you have some way of kind of matching up and saying, okay, here's our growth roadmap for us to be able to look at these, 4 to 6 items over the next 5 years. In the past, I'm more probably entrepreneurial and saying, okay, we're gonna test them. So we just go and test each one of them, and at times didn't put the effort or energy into each one of them enough to make it work. So what are you seeing there of how do you select them, and then how you make sure that you smash them up in a way so that you have enough resources on each one?
Yeah, I think that, it's a little bit of that is art and science, right? So, I do, and I'm happy to share with you sort of an opportunity assessment and opportunity planning tool. I'll just send it to you. I actually stole a little bit of it from Aisha on Invectress and how they approach new, products. Starts with market need. But then the decision criteria for your 6 is very dependent on what your stakeholder goals are. So I set so there's a way to assess that, which of the 6 even get a business plan if you want to write 6, or which of the 9 get a business plan. But then once you get to that business plan, it really depends on what the stakeholder wants. Does the stakeholder want revenue? Does the stakeholder want margin? Does the stakeholder have resources? And so we did something similar to this with Dewey's, but we agreed on what the decision framework was. We built that decision framework based on the strategic objectives. And then we did it in a workshop, which I'm sure there's, more scientific ways to do it. But we actually, with the business case, had them share them. And then we agreed on the framework, and then we actually scored those as a team, and then had a lot of discussion about, why this, not that. We kind of changed roles and said, why wouldn't this work? Kind of, even if I was on the team, what could go wrong? And then we picked. So that's why I say there's art and science to it, because it still goes back to, and this, it could be the best idea ever, but if I don't have a person who's passionate about leading it, doesn't matter. So, bye, Kate. Thank you. I think it's that combination of what makes sense for the business, and then who I have that's passionate to lead it.
Great.
Yeah.
And I like your comment about, starting off with the stakeholder objectives. And so for us, one of them is strategic differentiation. So what's going to differentiate us out of a Red Sea kind of commodity business and provide significant niche dominance?
Awesome. Bye, Robert. All right. Thanks, Ray. All right, guys. John, I hope that was helpful. Jackie, Amanda, thank you. Cindy, we love you. Any parting thoughts? Oh, you're muted, but you're muted.
I was just teasing that it says I'm Nancy. But great chat. Love it. Love it. And for any of you that want to jumpstart, Darcy's got a fabulous strategic jumpstart to look at where your plans are.
Yeah, we do the same thing, almost same presentation, but it would be your team's data. And then I'd share those tools that I think you could do. It's like $3,500 for a half day.